I still remember the way she said it. Not in a fight, not in some dramatic confrontation. No, it was on an ordinary Tuesday night. She was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing out a wine glass, her hair tucked behind one ear, backlit by the under-cabinet lighting like something out of a domestic commercial. I had just mentioned, almost jokingly, that maybe one day I'd disappear. You know, leave it all behind, start fresh in Montana or Spain, go somewhere quiet. She didn't even turn to look at me, just let out a soft, condescending laugh and said, "You'd never leave me." Just like that. Not in fear, not even mockery, just certainty, like it was a fact written in stone. That sentence carved something into me that night, something I didn't understand at the time. Not fully, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel it, the shift. Like she wasn't just stating something she believed. She was daring me. We'd been married 9 years at that point. No kids. Lots of late nights and early mornings. She worked in marketing. I ran logistics for a chain of small suppliers. Both of us chasing success, but rarely catching rest. We were a team, or so I thought. But slowly, subtly, I began to notice that I was the only one using that word anymore. She was always 2 steps ahead in any argument. Not cruel, exactly, just dismissive. Like she couldn't be bothered to explain why she was right and I was wrong. Because to her, it was just obvious. When she started leaving for client dinners more often, I didn't question her. I didn't want to be the jealous husband. That wasn't me. At least, not then. But things started stacking up. Like unopened bills she swore she'd handled. Charges from upscale restaurants she claimed were work-related, even though she hated seafood, and the receipts showed lobster and champagne. A new necklace she said was a birthday gift from a colleague. Only I knew her birthday had passed weeks ago, and she'd made no mention of it then. I didn't confront her. I asked questions, careful ones. She always had answers, but the answers came too fast, too rehearsed. And then came the silence. The kind of silence that creeps into a marriage not through absence, but through knowing. Through pretending. The night I found the phone, her second phone, I was reaching for a blanket in the back of the closet. She was asleep. The phone buzzed once, then twice. No lock screen. Just a thread of messages with a man named Dylan. Not flirtatious. Not sexy. But intimate. Comfortable. Like 2 people who had passed through the fire of secrecy and come out on the other side, laughing. I didn't lose it. I didn't wake her up or throw the phone. I just sat there on the closet floor, holding it like it was some kind of artifact, a relic of a life I didn't know I'd been living in. I read enough to understand. Dylan wasn't just some fling. He was an escape route. A plan B. Or maybe he'd always been plan A. The next morning, I made coffee like I always did. Kissed her on the forehead, even though my stomach churned. I went to work. I smiled in meetings. And that evening, she walked through the door like nothing had shifted. Like I wasn't already halfway out the door in my mind. But here's the part that still catches in my throat. I didn't leave right away. You'd think discovering something like that would be the breaking point. But for me, it was a seed. It had to grow roots first. I started watching more carefully. Listening. Gathering. Her routines, her tone of voice, her habits with money. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning clarity. A clean break. She kept saying things that revealed more than she meant to. She'd mention how lucky I was to have someone like her. How I'd never survive on my own. And always, always with that smug undertone. You'd never leave me. And maybe she was right. Maybe I wouldn't have. Not if she hadn't kept pressing that bruise. Not if she hadn't made leaving feel like the only way I could remember who I used to be before I became a passenger in my own life. One night, we were at dinner with her friends. Someone asked about our upcoming anniversary. She laughed and said, "Oh, I've stopped counting. He stuck with me, anyway." They all laughed. I did too. But inside, I was already gone. That week, I opened a separate bank account. Quietly, legally, I started shifting small amounts of money, just enough not to raise suspicion. I called an old friend in North Carolina, someone she didn't know. He had a guest house and no questions. I updated my passport. I began moving my name off anything we co-owned that I could legally remove without tipping her off. And still, she didn't notice. Or maybe she did, but thought it was cute. A phase. One of those little independence kicks people go through before snapping back into place. "You'd never leave me," she said again 2 nights before I left. We were in bed, her back to me, her voice thick with sleep and smugness. I said nothing. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing, and made my decision. There was no note, no dramatic exit. I didn't take the car. I didn't drain the account. I left her everything she thought mattered. The house, the closet full of designer shoes, the carefully curated life we had built like a set piece. At 5:42 a.m. the next morning, while the sky was still bruised with night, I picked up my duffel bag and walked out the front door. I didn't look back. And now, a year later, she's still wondering where I went. The first morning away was a strange kind of quiet. It wasn't peace, not yet. More like the absence of noise, like my ears were still ringing from a sound that had finally stopped. I was halfway across the state, tucked into a guest room that smelled faintly of cedar and old books. My friend, Jonah, hadn't asked for explanations. He'd just handed me a mug of coffee, clapped a hand on my shoulder, and said, "You've got time." That sentence, "You've got time," felt like permission to breathe again. I didn't tell anyone where I went. No family, no coworkers, no mutual friends. I ghosted the life I'd built. My phone stayed off for days. I shaved my beard, wore a ball cap when I went into town. It wasn't about hiding. Not exactly. It was about shrinking my world down to something I could hold in my hands. Something real. For the first time in years, no one needed anything from me. No passive-aggressive comments. No calendar reminders. No expectations wrapped in silk and suffocated under the weight of appearances. Just silence. And questions. The first email came 3 days after I left. Then 4 texts. A voicemail. Then 2 more. All from her. "Where are you? Call me." This isn't funny. Each one a little less composed. But still, no apology. No real concern. Just confusion. Like a child shaking an empty snow globe, wondering why it won't swirl anymore. A week in, she sent a longer message. "I know you're mad. I get it. I know I've been distant. But you don't just walk away like this. Not from us. This isn't you." And there it was again, that phrase, "This isn't you." As if she still believed she had the map of me in her back pocket. As if I was the one off course. The thing is, she wasn't entirely wrong. For years, walking away wasn't me. I stuck it out through long silences and quiet betrayals. I made excuses when she changed plans last minute, missed family holidays, forgot our anniversaries. I told myself it was just a phase, that relationships go through seasons. But I was lying to myself. Because deep down, I knew the truth. She stayed not because she loved me, but because she knew I wouldn't leave. That was the game. Her power didn't come from affection. It came from certainty. And the moment I took that away, her world started to tilt. Jonah gave me work. Nothing fancy, manual stuff. Fixing fences, patching drywall, helping at a local mechanic's shop a few towns over. Honest work. I was sore after the first week. My hands got rough again. My shoulders loosened. I remembered the feeling of doing something and seeing the result right in front of me. No spreadsheets. No metrics. Just effort and outcome. At night, I journaled. I wrote everything. Memories, questions, regrets. I wrote about the first time she told me she loved me, and how it didn't feel like a confession, but a claim. I wrote about the slow erasure of self in a relationship where love was currency, and she always kept the books. I didn't write to publish. I wrote to remember. The hardest part wasn't being alone. It was unlearning the idea that I owed her something, that I owed anyone an explanation for choosing myself. A month in, she finally called my brother. That's when I knew things were shifting. My brother, who she never liked, who she once called small-town trash after he spilled beer on her heels at our engagement party. He texted me. "She's looking for you. Says it's an emergency. You okay?" I replied, simply, "I'm good. Don't tell her." He didn't. The next voicemail from her was different. Softer. Slower. "Look, I'm not proud of everything I said or did. I thought you'd never really go. I didn't think you could. And I know that makes me sound awful, but it's the truth. You scared me. You still do." There was a long pause. Then, "Can we talk? Just talk." I didn't respond. Because something had shifted in me, too. See, I always thought leaving had to come with a door slam, a suitcase, maybe a tearful speech. I thought it had to be cinematic. But it doesn't. Sometimes leaving is just quiet. A decision made with tired eyes and a packed bag. Sometimes it's not about punishing someone else. It's about saving yourself. She started sending photos after that. A picture of the dog I left behind, her dog, technically, one she got after I said I wasn't ready for the responsibility. A photo of my old coffee mug, chipped at the handle. One of the sunrise from our back porch, captioned, "You always loved mornings like this." Each message was a thread, trying to pull me back. But I didn't pull. Instead, I built something new. Small routines. Morning runs. Dinners at the bar with Jonah's friends, who didn't know my history and didn't care. They asked what brought me to town. I said, just needed a reset. That was true. By the time fall rolled around, I'd been gone 3 months. Long enough for the silence to feel normal. Long enough for the idea of returning to feel foreign. And then, one evening, I got an email. No subject line. No salutation. I still sleep on my side of the bed. I don't know why. That was it. No begging. No blame. Just that one line. I stared at the screen for a long time. Because in that sentence, I could hear it. Something new. Not anger. Not confusion. But absence. An ache. Maybe even understanding. And maybe she was finally starting to feel what I had felt for years. Emptiness that used to be filled by a presence you took for granted. But I didn't reply. Because I was no longer the man she left behind. And she was no longer the woman I needed to prove myself to. It was nearly 6 months to the day when I saw her again. Not planned. Not expected. I was standing in line at a farmer's market in a little town 2 hours from Jonah's place, holding a carton of eggs and a coffee, when I heard my name. My real name. Not the one I'd been using at the mechanic shop or the one on the local gym membership. No one around here called me that. No one could, unless they were from the life I'd left behind. I turned, and there she was. Her hair was longer, darker. No makeup, no designer sunglasses, or perfect posture. She looked like someone who had run out of performance. Just jeans, sneakers, a soft flannel that swallowed her frame. I said nothing. She stepped closer, cautiously, like I might vanish if she moved too fast. "I've been coming here every Saturday," she said. "Just in case." I wasn't sure what hit me harder, her presence, or the idea that part of her believed I might come back. "I thought you hated farmers markets," I replied, almost without meaning to. She gave a weak smile. "I hated waking up early. You always did the market runs alone. I just liked the produce." It would have been so easy to hate her in that moment. To bring up Dylan. To remind her of the laughter, the gaslighting, the certainty in her voice when she said I'd never leave. To spit back every voicemail, every email, every too late apology. But I didn't. I didn't feel hate. I didn't even feel vindication. I just felt distance. Not the kind measured in miles, but in growth. In the years I lived trapped inside a version of myself that bent and broke to keep her comfortable. "Why?" I asked finally. "Why all the messages, the chasing, the waiting?" She hesitated. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, quiet, stripped of arrogance, she said, "Because you weren't supposed to mean it." I raised an eyebrow. "You said you'd never leave," she continued. "You promised, back when things were good. You said you'd be here, no matter what. I counted on that." She blinked, tears threatening but not falling. I didn't respect it, but I counted on it. That's the truth. There it was. The confession. She hadn't expected consequences. Just endurance. My endurance. I nodded slowly. "That's the thing, though. I meant it when I promised to stay. But I never promised to stay if you stopped treating me like I mattered." She looked away, wiped her cheek with the sleeve of her flannel. "I don't know who I am without you." I wanted to tell her that wasn't my problem anymore. That maybe she needed to sit with that truth like I had to sit with mine. I wanted to say all the wise, dramatic things I'd thought up during long walks and sleepless nights. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "You'll figure it out. We both did a lot of pretending. I'm just not pretending anymore." She opened her mouth, closed it again, then finally asked, "Is there someone else?" The question surprised me. Maybe it shouldn't have. "No," I said, "but there is me. And that's enough for now." She looked like she was trying to understand what that meant. Like she'd never once considered the idea of me choosing myself over her. We didn't hug. We didn't exchange numbers. We didn't promise to stay in touch. She just nodded, stepped back, and said quietly, "You really did leave." I met her eyes. "Yeah, and I'm not coming back." She stood there as I walked away, carton of eggs in hand, the same way I'd walked away from our home all those months ago. Calm, clear, not with anger, but with finality. That night, I sat on the porch with Jonah. He handed me a beer, no questions asked. The stars were sharp in the cold sky, and the silence was soft, not lonely. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to be what she needed. All the bending, the shrinking, the holding my breath. And I thought about how it had started to feel like survival, not love. I'm not bitter. I don't want her to suffer. I just want her to understand that love isn't built on certainty. It's built on care, on the quiet choices we make every day to stay present, to stay kind, to stay real. She thought I never would leave. And now she knows. When a man has nothing left to prove and nothing left to fear, he can disappear without a sound. I didn't vanish to punish her. I vanished to remember who I was before she convinced me I could never be whole without her. And that, more than anything, is what she still doesn't understand. She's still wondering where I went. But I'm already gone.